Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Pewaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Today, we'll learn about a library program working to help the community with early literacy skills. Then we'll tell you about Wisconsin's first skating ribbon and help you plan a trip there in a new Wandering Wisconsin.
We really didn't know what to expect the first year, and just the opening weekend had a huge response. Thousands of loops around the glide.
Plus, we'll learn how the Manfred Olson Planetarium at UWM is celebrating Black History Month by combining poetry and stargazing.
I understood in that moment when I got off the stage the power in words, the power in that community, and how poetry can do so many things, from releasing to inspiring to educating, you name it.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Thanks for joining us today. The library is more than just books, and our Books and Beyond series with the Milwaukee Public Library showcases just that. We share resources, book recommendations, and some cool stuff you might not know about. For this edition of Books and Beyond, we're learning about an early literacy program called ABC Academy offered at the Central Library Branch. This program hopes to help fill Milwaukee's literacy gap. Since 2009, our public school literacy rates have fallen, and just this year, MPS launched a new plan to try and turn these rates around. The library's ABC Academy program is for young readers to help with kindergarten readiness. The program goes beyond your typical story time and focuses on different activities to help build on letter recognition. To share more, I'm joined by Central Library's Children's Room librarian, Aaron Sloan, and Milwaukee artist Wave Chappelle, who's here today not as a musician, but as a dad helping his son learn to read. Sloan begins by explaining what ABC Academy is and how it was developed.
Yeah, so I used to work at the Wake County Public Libraries in North Carolina, and I was one of the library staff who sort of helped cultivate this program. It was designed by a different librarian, but then we were brought in to sort of help it grow. And when I came to Milwaukee, I knew I wanted to do something similar, make it a little more specific to here, and then there were some other small changes that I wanted to make that I thought could work a little better. And so over the course of 7 years, we finally got it greenlit, and we've started last summer. And it's a program that is an early literacy, kindergarten readiness program that focuses on letter recognition. So every week, it's a new letter. We go in alphabetical order, and it's all the uppercase letters followed by all of the lowercase letters.
Excellent. And I understand you incorporate something called the 5 practices. What are those, and why is it key to help with this early stages of reading?
Yeah, so the 5 practices were developed by the American Library Association, and they are talking, singing, reading, writing, and playing. And those we talk about in all of our programs, especially for children, young children across the board. Those 5 things, again, talking, singing, reading, writing, and playing, if you incorporate those into your daily life, it's shown to really increase your child's early literacy rates. So this program specifically, I wanted to make sure that we kind of step on each one of those. And so there's a different section of the program that highly incorporates one of the 5 practices.
So let's kind of walk through an example.
Yeah.
Let's start with the beginning of the alphabet. We're going with the capital letter A. What kind of activities do you have to hit on those 5 practices for kids?
Yeah, so we open the program up where we are talking about the letter of the week. The person leading the program will give the children hints with other words that start with that letter. When the children guess, or even if they don't guess, we'll eventually reveal what the letter of the week is, discuss the sounds it makes phonetically, and then what it looks like. When you see it on the page, we'll have them use their fingers to make it in the air. Then we'll read a book that's a little longer that really highlights that one specific letter. And then we'll move the children from the reading area, the storytime circle, to a different part of the room to kind of highlight, again, that kindergarten aspect of moving around the room, where we'll go to a craft time. They'll have to write the letter on the page, then they'll use scissors to cut the letter out, then they'll color the letter, do whatever they want to make it into, let's say, A is for apple. They'll kind of turn the A somewhat into an apple or something that looks apple-esque. And then when their product is finished, they'll go to the play area. So then there's movement again into a different part of the room. They're playing together. And then when that part is over, there's show and tell. And then we sing the alphabet song and we close the program out. So we're really, in about 45 minutes to an hour, able to incorporate all 5 of those practices.
I love that. A lot of, it sounds like repeating and reinforcing with different activities.
Repetition is one of the most important factors in early literacy. Singing the same songs or the same tunes with different words, all of that is really vital to helping kids learn to read.
That's great to know. Now, Wave, you're here not as a musician and artist today, you're here as a dad.
Absolutely.
So can you share a bit about how you were first navigating, these early stages of literacy when you're like, I think it's time to get involved and show my son some things? What were you kind of thinking? Because it's a lot to take on.
Absolutely. Just piggybacking kind of off of what Aaron was saying, just a lot of songs, a lot of singing. When my son, his name is Saul, when he was born, we would sing to him. And, you would get books from like family and like gifts and things like that. And we would always get books. And initially he was always drawn to like the colors. And of course, when he's able to like, kind of talk and mouth out the words a little bit. So again, just singing, repetition, reading to him before bed or in the morning, things like that, and just kind of just diving right into it,
Yeah. And I understand you go to MLK branch pretty often,
Yes.
and they have helped reinforce some of these practices. What kind of resources have you been using at the library?
Mainly just honestly the books. He loves the books, and he knows specifically. I love it so much because the library is just so resourceful, and you can find exactly what you're looking for. Like when he goes, he's like, I want Eric Carle,
Yes.
and we can go and find like all these specific books that he loves, and I think that just raises the excitement of it and just keeps him wanting to continue to come, and so I think it's awesome.
You mentioned Eric Carle. What other favorite books or activities do you guys like to do together?
He's definitely heavy on the puzzles as well. Like I like to do we have these like ABC puzzles, so it has the letters on them. But so you kind of like work in 2 things at once. You're like, the repetition of doing the ABCs and having the letters, but also, using the tool like, piecing these puzzles together and just the activity of it. So just the puzzles, and then again, the books the books all day. Eric Carle, he's really into Pete the Cat. Heavy on Pete the Cat.
This is kind of a question for both of you, but as a parent, what kind of extra tools are you looking for to make sure like you're continuing the right practices outside of library time? And then Aaron, like what would you recommend or reinforce with that?
I would just say just keeping it up at home, the same things that you find that your kid likes to do at the library, go and find those things maybe at the store and bring them to, or even get them from the library, take them home and just kind of keep reinforcing those same things at the house, whether it's, again, doing the ABCs or doing certain activities, reading these same books or even trying new books. One thing that me and my son are doing now, I have him for every day of the month. So this is February, so 28 books. Had him fill a crate of 28 books. We read 2 a day and add those books to an empty crate, and we just read until those books are done. So just certain activities like that to keep them going.
Yeah, all of that is amazing. We, in our story time specifically, we do something called asides, which are kind of tips and tricks for parents to practice at home, and we do them in ABC Academy as well. Just kind of little reminders of how you can extend this, or maybe why we're speaking in a certain way, or why we've repeated a song so many times. So if you come to a library program, always keep your ears out for that, because they are very helpful tips about why we're doing what we're doing. And anything that you really like you see at the library, like you were mentioning, trying to emulate that at home. We have a lot of like sensory bins and puzzles and things like that, which are always great for those things that maybe you don't recognize as early literacy, but in the long run, they actually are.
Right. I think that's the key, is like you might not know what you're practicing is going to help with literacy in the long run. So When parents are coming to ABC Academy, I understand you kind of structure it like a kindergarten class, so the parents are more hands-off, right?
Yeah, we really emphasize that, your child will very soon or maybe is already in school where you're not there to kind of guide them. And, when they're doing specifically the craft part, it can be hard for all of us, all the adults in the room, to watch a child do with scissors what they're going to do with scissors. But, the reality is there's one or two teachers in a classroom who will not be able to, give one-on-one care. And so it's a good practice for kids to learn that independence. And also, like, cutting is such a specific skill that they will need to learn in kindergarten or K4, K5. And it's very fun to watch. And it's also a good, reminder for parents that your kiddo is becoming a little more independent, and it's fun to watch them do that.
Absolutely. And as far as feedback, what has it been like? I mean, I know you mentioned you had launched this at a different state library and had adjusted some things for Milwaukee. So what have you been hearing, seeing, noticing? Yeah,
we've had really good feedback, really good turnouts every week. What we love about the program specifically is Saturdays we're a little shorter staffed, and we can, all the librarians and reference staff are trained to do the program, so we can kind of all jump in at a moment's notice, which makes it lovely for us. And then it's great because we all get to know all of the kids who keep coming back, because we've really built up a good group of regulars who are coming and are excited each week to see what the next letter is. We've had, I think, at least 2 or 3 kids who I think have been to almost every letter at this point, which is really exciting. And then, every week building more and more of that base. And it's so fun to watch the program flourish as it has.
How do you hope this program will set kind of a different precedent in helping to fill this literacy gap in Milwaukee specifically? You said that you adjusted some things to work better here. So what were some of those examples?
Yeah, the biggest one for me was that when we were doing it previously, the direction the letter went on the page kind of didn't matter as much. So like A was for alligator, where we had to flip the A on its side to make the letter look like an alligator. And so I was really specific and intentional, like we need to make sure that how this letter looks on the page is exactly how they will see it, like in their craft. And then when they're reading, it needs to be exact. And that was something I was really vocal about there, and I'm so happy that we've been able to handle that here. And then also being really intentional about the books that we choose that correlate with the word or the letter of the week. And I think kind of focusing in on those two things have really helped us make the program stronger in my mind.
Now, Wave, I understand outside of just being a patron for yourself and your son at the library, you're going to be working with the library a bit to help with this program?
Absolutely. Again, just bringing my son through and working on some content. You know what I mean? We want to put some content together and really just get the word out there that this is a thing. And this is, we want to encourage all the parents, not just the older parents, young parents, bring your kids. And because this is a very beneficial program. And I just think it's really great work. And so, we're gonna put our creative skills together, put some really cool content videos together, and promotion of this.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. So, Erin, we've been talking about this program for people listening who have young kiddos who are wanting to get involved to come to ABC Academy. How did they do that?
Yeah, so right now the program is being offered at the Central Library. It's every Saturday. We almost run it entirely year-round. There are some, bigger programs that take precedence, like our summer reading program kickoff. But for the most part, every Saturday, rain or shine, we will be there. It's at 10:30 in the morning, and it runs for about 45 minutes to an hour. Right now, it is only at the Central Library, but we are currently trying to figure out the best way to bring it to the branch libraries. So hopefully, at least in the north side of Milwaukee, central, and then south side of Milwaukee, we'll be able to offer it. My hope is within this year, but that might be a little lofty, but we'll see. But yeah, Central Library at 10:30 every Saturday.
And just in case there's, conflicts in schedules, maybe Saturdays don't work for everyone, what other group activities are at the library that parents can attend?
Yeah, so all of our branch libraries have story time, and we have it for different ages. So we've got baby story time. We have sort of a toddler story time called Playgroup with Stories, which is a 25-minute story time, and then there's playtime with toys at the end. And then we also have family story time, and there's variations within there, but each one is sort of created to target that specific age group. So the books that you read, the songs that you sing, the toys that you play with will all be for those specific age groups. And again, those are at all of our libraries throughout the week, and most of them are in the morning during the weekday, but we do have a couple branch libraries who offer them in the evening as well.
Great. And Wave, you've done a few story times?
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone to a few story times, and he absolutely loves them. And I think story time in general is just good for kids because one, they get to sit with a bunch of other kids and just hear this cool story, and they get to take away things. You know what I mean? You ask, hey, what was your favorite part of the book, or what was your favorite part of the story? And I think that is another thing that just really excites kids.
And Wave, for you, working with your son, doing these activities, what's some of the most gratifying moments and takeaways you have?
Just watching the excitement, honestly. Like, he just has so much fun with these different activities. And you truly, as a parent, you just get to sit back and kind of watch them grow in front of you. From not being able to pronounce apple to, knowing it off the back when they see it, or just all these different words and letters that they're coming across. I think that's the most gratifying part, is just watching the growth.
Well, I look forward to seeing this program grow as well. So, Aaron and Wave, thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron Sloan is a librarian at the Central Library Children's Room, and Wave Chappelle is a Milwaukee artist and dad who'll be working with the library to spread the word about ABC Academy. For more information on the program and other library resources, head on over to wuwm.com. And if you haven't explored our education reporter Catherine Kokel's series on literacy, you can also find her work and additional literacy resources on our website. Lake Effect is available as a podcast, so you can listen whenever you like. Find it where you get your podcasts, then subscribe, download, and listen on the go. In about 15 minutes, we'll learn how the Manfred Olson Planetarium at UW-Milwaukee is celebrating Black History Month by combining poetry and stargazing. But first, we'll tell you about Wisconsin's first ice skating ribbon and help you plan a trip to try it out. Keep listening to Lake Effect on WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Many Midwesterners have donned a pair of ice skates and hit the rink or a frozen pond in the winter. But have you ever tried a skating ribbon? It's essentially an ice skating trail in the woods, and the first one opened in Wisconsin last winter. It's called the Glide at Boulder Junction Winter Park, an outdoor winter recreation area. For this month's Wandering Wisconsin, we'll help you plan a trip there. Lake Effect's Becky Mortensen is joined by Mary Jones, the executive director of the Boulder Junction Chamber of Commerce, and Amanda Weibel with Travel Wisconsin.
Mary, can you start by explaining what the Glide is?
Absolutely. The Glide is a skating ribbon. It is a 0.8-mile loop through the forest here in Boulder Junction, Wisconsin. The probably closest sort of parallel to skating the ribbon is like skating wild ice. So it is maintained. There is a Zamboni, there is a water machine, there's brushing that happens daily to help maintain the ice. Because it is laid down on a natural surface, there are some, little hills, little dips, things that you encounter along the way that makes it different than just skating on a level skating rink.
So this is the Glide's second year. What has the response been from visitors?
It has been astronomically positive. It was something that we really didn't know what to expect the first year. And just the opening weekend had a huge response. Thousands of loops around the Glide, according to our trail counters. And since then, that interest has only grown. So far this year, we've had, I think it's about 15,000 visitors, if not more, to the Glide just since it opened mid-December this winter.
So what should people plan for? About how long will the ribbon take, and what's the best way to enjoy their time?
It's a lot of fun. We do have skating aids. We have some walkers out there for people who need a little bit of help, like if you haven't skated in a while or you're not the strongest skater. Like I said, there are those little bits of hills and dips as you're skating along, but you're in the woods, you're in the forest. So you are skating through just this beautiful forested area. It's gorgeous. You're seeing nature like you haven't seen it before. So depending on if you are, going a little bit more leisurely, enjoying it with your friends, maybe 10 minutes at the longest. If you are speed skating, I think we had someone that says their record is doing it in 4 minutes. Personally, I think it's more fun to go a little bit slower and really take in your surroundings, but there are people that go out there and that's their exercise in the winter since they can't go running.
How did this idea come about? I understand that skating ribbons are popular in Canada, so how did the Glide come to be in Boulder Junction?
We have a very dedicated and involved parks board here in Boulder Junction, and they are constantly looking for things to bring to town that will enrich the local environment and be something that the locals can enjoy, but something that will help our tourism industry and bring in people from all over the state. And so, one of the men on the parks board, his wife had seen a video of someone actually on a skating ribbon in Canada and brought it to him and said, "Wouldn't this be fun?" And he said, "It absolutely would." Took it back to the rest of the parks board, and they were able to make it happen.
So you did talk a little bit about maintenance, but how was the park built and how is the ribbon maintained?
Boulder Junction Winter Park is actually a partnership between the town of Boulder Junction and the Wisconsin DNR. It is part of the Northern Highland American Legion State Forest, and the town operates the park through a land use agreement with the DNR. The park has actually been in existence for years as Boulder Junction Winter Park. And the skating ribbon that we're skating on now, prior to last winter, was actually a snowshoeing trail. And it got a handful of people throughout the winter, but we are surrounded, like I said, by the Northern Highland American Legion State Forest, which with much more expansive trails available to us. So this little loop wasn't getting utilized very often. And so that's sort of how the skating ribbon came to be where it is. In terms of maintenance, the town purchased a Zamboni that is pulled by a tractor. They also have a water system that lays down the water on the trail that freezes into the ice. They also have a brush roller that is put on a tractor to help maintain it as well. Last year, we had a volunteer team spend about 4,000 hours. It was between 4,000 and 8,000 hours maintaining the trail. They're out every morning that the weather allows to clear any snow that's fallen overnight, to lay down water as needed, and then to run the Zamboni as needed to maintain the ice conditions.
And what else can people do at the Winter Park?
In addition to the skating ribbon, the Boulder Junction Winter Park has an ice skating rink for more freestyle skating or for playing hockey. There is a sledding hill, a warming hut, a fire pit area, as well as a picnic pavilion.
All right, and Amanda, I'm going to turn to you. For our outdoor winter enthusiasts, what else would you recommend people do in the Boulder Junction area?
Well, Becky, there are so many ways to enjoy the outdoors in the area. Mary mentioned the Northern Highland American Legion State Forest. This is a massive forest. It covers more than 200,000 acres, and it's also a great destination for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. There are 4 excellently groomed and tracked cross-country ski trails, and several of them run alongside the lake, so it's very beautiful. And speaking of those lakes, definitely pack your ice fishing gear when you visit. Vilas County is actually home to over 1,300 lakes. And some of the local favorites in the Boulder Junction area include Wildcat, High, and Fish Trap lakes, so definitely check those out. Another favorite winter activity in the area is snowmobiling. Vilas County is where the modern snowmobile was invented 102 years ago. And today you can find over 120 miles of trails in the Boulder Junction area alone, but those trails hook up with hundreds of more miles of trails in the broader region. And if you don't have your own sled or you can't bring it up with you, Boulder Marine Center rents snowmobiles for daily use, and they also rent all the gear that you'll need to stay warm and comfortable on your ride.
And how about for those who maybe want to take a break from the cold and find something to do inside?
You're also going to find some really great shopping options in the area. The Boulder Junction Trading Company is a really fun one to check out. They have a wide selection of goods. You'll find gifts, candy, jewelry, clothes, soup mixes, and much more. Another local business is Moon Deer and Friends Gallery. This gallery is open on weekends through March 1st, and they stock contemporary artwork from more than 150 local and regional artists. You are going to find pieces covering all kinds of mediums, from wood carving and ceramics to paintings, photography, metal sculptures, and it's just so incredible to see so many local artists on display. If you're looking for a little excursion, head to nearby St. Germain for the Snowmobile Hall of Fame. This is a museum that's dedicated to preserving and showcasing that rich history of snowmobiling. And you're going to see historic sleds, some trophies, apparel, and you can watch videos of both recreational and competitive riding.
Okay, so if someone's planning a winter getaway around visiting the Glide, where are some places you'd recommend they stay in the Boulder Junction area?
I recommend checking out Big Bear Hideaway if you're looking for that quintessential cabin feel. The resort features these modern built log cabins that were constructed out of locally felled logs. And each cabin, again, it's just that warm, inviting look and feel. Big Bear Hideaway also has a sauna on site, so that's going to be a really great spot to relax your muscles after skating at the Glide. Another good in-town option is the Boulder Junction Motor Lounge. It has a classic roadside motor lounge look to it. You can arrive at your leisure. They have a self-check-in system, so it's really easy to start your adventure. And they have several visitor-focused amenities. They have an on-site storage shed for bikes, so if you're up in the area for some winter fat biking, that's really convenient. And you can also unwind in the common area with their new massage chairs.
Okay, that sounds nice. And how about some places to grab a hot drink or a meal?
You will find lots of tasty options to warm up at the Boulder Junction Coffee Company. It's a really quaint coffee shop, all the different coffee and tea drinks that you would want to keep warm while spending a day outside, but you'll want to stick around for the food too. Boulder Junction Coffee Company serves made to order breakfast and lunch, and it's a really simple yet delicious menu. It's got lots of comforting sandwiches and great baked goods. Also, make sure to check out the newest destination. Boulder Junction Brewing Company just opened last month. This has been a really long anticipated microbrewery, and they're bringing bold, fresh flavors to the Northwoods. So you can be one of the first visitors to try their initial round of 6 original beers that are brewed right on Main Street, Boulder Junction.
All right, so for both of you, because the Glide is a relatively new experience, I'm wondering what you would want a new visitor to know before they make the trip.
Certainly, before someone comes to skate the Glide, I would definitely recommend planning ahead with your skates. If you're going to bring your own, fantastic. But if you're looking to borrow or rent skates, definitely plan ahead for that because the rentals in town are in high demand.
And how about for you, Amanda?
Well, I think people have things they look forward to doing each season in Wisconsin. And the Glide is such a great reminder that there are new and unexpected ways to get out and make winter memories this year. This is Wisconsin's first ice skating ribbon. So a lot of folks haven't had the pleasure of experiencing it yet, skating through the woods. So I really suggest just embracing the awe of it all. Enjoy that truly picturesque setting. Take some time to appreciate how unique of an attraction it is and go and make some memories while the season lasts.
Well, Amanda and Mary, thank you so much for joining me for Wandering Wisconsin.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Amanda Weibel is the Communications Officer for Travel Wisconsin. Mary Jones is the Executive Director of Boulder Junction Chamber of Commerce. They both joined Lake Effect's Becky Mortensen for this month's Wandering Wisconsin. And for more ideas of places to travel around our state, head to WUWM.com. UW-Milwaukee's Manfred Olson Planetarium has honored Black History Month in different ways through its programming. And this year, the format will combine stargazing and poetry for stars, stories, and rhythms of Africa. While the stargazing component will be looking up at the sky of Mali, the poetry will be uniquely Milwaukee, with the works of our city's poet laureate, Shelley Conley. To share more about the program, I'm joined by our astronomy contributor, Jean Creighton, as well as poet Shelley Conley, who begins our conversation by sharing how she first realized the power poetry had in her life.
I didn't personally start writing poetry until middle school, and it was a way to deal with all the breakups that I had. Go figure in middle school.
The tortured poet.
Yeah, so exactly. So all my poems when I was younger was that, and really only one or two people saw them. And then I continued poetry and journaling until, I was maybe in my 20s initially. I mean, I still do it, but around 20, maybe 3 or 4, I was invited out to a poetry set, an open mic set at Mecca nightclub. Shout out to Dasha Kelly. I'm so grateful for her space. So that was where I got submerged or immersed in poetry. I was there for a full year before I got the courage to ever share on the mic. I was nervous. People were like, "Oh, you have a notebook. Do you write?" And I'm like, "Yep." And they're like, "Are you going to read?" "Nope." And I would leave every week, come and go. And so anyway, I got the courage after a year to share, and I never stopped. I understood in that moment when I got off the stage the power in words, the power in that community, and how poetry can do so many things, from releasing to inspiring to educating, you name it.
Yeah, and you both are partnering to do a show at the planetarium with your poetry involved. So can either of you share how this partnership came about, the idea, how you wanted to form a show in a different way?
So the planetarium has tried to honor Black History Month every year in some way for some years now. I think it's been 7. And each year, it can take slightly different format depending on who the speaker could be. But this time we thought, wouldn't it be nice for the Stars, Stories, and Rhythms of Africa to have an African-American perspective? And we were introduced to the Milwaukee Poet Laureate, and I thought, oh, yes, this is the way to go. And we've kind of worked together now a couple times, and it's been a joy to kind of exchange ideas of how to make the experience for the audience as powerful as possible, and to celebrate the lyricism and the message that Shelley's poems carry.
Agreed.
Well, and Shelley, to bring poetry to the planetarium, obviously the stars have inspired countless pieces of art, whether it's words, paintings, film, etc. What about the planetarium excites you or inspires you in a different way? And what did you want to bring to this show that might be different from your typical, say, open mic night that you'd participate in?
So one thing, as far as the planetarium specifically, I shared this when we met initially, that I had only ever been to the, I don't know, is it at the museum, I want to say? The planetarium there. But it's a great memory that I have from when I was in 4th or 5th grade. I wrote about it in my diary when I got home that we went there. And so that's been carried with me all these years. And so when I read the email, I was just excited, the planetarium. I haven't been back, honestly, since I was a kid. I went once with my son on a field trip, or my daughter, one of the two. Anyway, but I haven't been in years, so I was excited. Even reading the poem that I just did, I noticed there were unintentionally a lot of references. I'm fascinated with the sky. I love, if I walk outside at night and there's beautiful stars, I'm literally like, oh my gosh, look at the stars, And so that was exciting. And then something different, I wrote a poem originally for this specifically because I don't have a poem that specifically talks about the stars. Again, there's lots of references, but I thought it was going to be good to bring that piece in, as well as, the culture. Again, it's for Black History Month specifically. So to intertwine those two was a really good challenge, and I'm very pleased with the poem that came out of it. So.
Excellent. Well, yeah, there is a stars, stories, and rhythms component. So, Jean, let's talk about the stars. Can you share anything about the stargazing component? What is particularly exciting for you to present this region of the world?
So the thing that's exciting to me is that in the planetarium, we can show different skies. So we're going to transport ourselves to Mali this time. And we are going to see the sky from there. Now, it turns out that there's going to be common features that we can see in Milwaukee as well. And we normally start in Milwaukee just to give people, okay, this is how it looks like for us. Now let's move. Let's go to Mali. and see what the sky is going to look like there. One of the things that I'm going to highlight is the Seven Sisters. That's how I call them most of the time. People might know them as Pleiades. The word Subaru comes from there, means that. So the people of Mali, the Dogon culture, identified the Pleiades as a special kind of symbol of the universe. And in fact, because it's fairly nearby Orion, which I describe as a bow tie, they put it on their buildings where they stored their grain to remind us that the stars were like a calendar. Like, okay, here's when I need to prepare the fields, here's when the harvest is, based on what stars are visible. And that's true all around the world. And I love that idea that culture connects to the celestial in many ways, and I'm trying to highlight that.
Yeah, from Milwaukee to Mali. I love
exactly.
that. You can experience that at the campus at UWM. Now, I'm intrigued to learn a little more about the structure of the show. How are you guys kind of playing off of each other with the poetry aspect and the stargazing?
Okay, so Shelley's going to start like she did in our interview. There's going to be a moment, since the poem is powerful, to give a chance for the audience to respond to what they sense or feel or think about that. And then there'll be another poem. And then we're going to use that as a kind of an inspiration to look for some of those beautiful things mentioned in the sky. Again, as I said, start a little bit in Milwaukee just to get people their bearings, and then we'll move to Mali and see what the sky looks like and how it's different and how it's similar.
As you mentioned, Shelley, you wrote a poem especially for this program, and for people to hear it, they will have to go and enjoy this program in person on campus, and it's a free event, I want to note. But for today, do you mind taking us out with another poem?
I do not mind taking us out with another poem. I do want to just say, if I may, really quick, that I'm excited to have a friend of mine, a fellow poet, join me. She plays the djembe, and so she's going to accompany me as well. So
excellent. What's
I'm
her name?
excited. It goes with the rhythms. Her name is, she goes by Blue Lotus. That's what I know her as. So that's her stage name.
Excellent.
And I'll just say that the instrument that she plays is from Mali. When we know the exact location, then we'll fix the planetarium sky for that town or city in Mali. So that was a great sort of tie-in.
Yes, and can I say one more thing?
Of course.
So listening to you talk about stars, right, and the background and the history, it just makes me just think how poetry is everywhere and in everything. Like, that was listening to you was very poetic. And I think we just have to all remember that our stories are just that, whether we call them poems or stories or whatever, like, our history is beautiful. And when we speak about it in a way, as you did, people listen, and it's interesting. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, a poem. So this is actually called "Wish on a Star." That's the name of the poem. And I wrote it years ago, so it is not tied to this directly, but it gives a little snippet of who I am. See, when he entered, it was like the whisper of the wind on a dark and rainy night. I had dreamed of this moment as a child, the thought of reaching out to Daddy Dearest after 27 years. So was I delirious? Maybe I was filled with curiosity. See, I was craving to know this man who planted a seed but fled abruptly, like he rode the sea right out of his birth country. And in the mirror, it was always a mystery. Cuban features never fully blending in with my family, forcing me to be this adult and reach out my hand. Use that commanding nature that is only seen when anger boils over inside of me. You see, for years I carried through our constant moves one black and white photo. It was this man with boxing gloves and dark curly hair. He had the same hypnotizing eyes that I see when I look in the mirror, and I felt resentment because my own flesh shunned me. Yet I carried this wish in my back pocket that one day he'd return. And like those talk shows, we'd be nervous, but we'd hug and connect and forget or forgive. So on my 21st birthday, I wrote him a heartfelt letter, kind of like an essay arranged in a way that a child might speak to a parent who'd passed away. It said, Daddy, I hate you missed my birthdays and weren't there to cheer for me backstage at my pageant. And Daddy, I wished on a million stars that you'd been there to see my first car, or maybe that scar from the skid on the bike in the alley. And Daddy, I know you'd love to see this great woman I've become. So as I wrote this, tears were marked by numbness, then dumbness, 'cause forget him, see if he made the choice, then he had to live with it. And this thought of me feeling all this sadness felt ridiculous, so I tucked that letter away into the recess of my soul until 6 years later, when like a Black Panther pacing back and forth my soul, it was still unsettled, and this idea of a heartfelt reunion had passed, but these unanswered questions I still had to ask, and I was tired of masking this internal emptiness. So to fulfill, I decided to seek him, see the resemblance. No letters, no warnings. I wanted his true response. And I expected no apologies because it'd been way too long, and his apologies, they'd never rewrite his wrongs. There were no sad songs or lullabies. He opened the door with no surprise, like the gods had warned him of my coming. So there I was, staring at the eyes from the picture, the piece of the puzzle I'd been missing. Brief handshakes and cordial introductions. I was finally discovering this artifact, this piece of my mother's past that had been forgotten, and his surroundings showed me that his heart had been hardened, like arteries clogged. He held no room for memories of a buried seed. So our meet and greet left my glass empty. Deep down, I wished he'd asked me so many things. I wanted to blurt out, Daddy, lavender was my favorite childhood color. Daddy, the color purple still makes me cry, though I've watched it a million times. And Daddy, I inherited your taste for Spanish food, like you were there cooking me dinner every night. I wonder if he noticed how stubborn we both are, how we both sat at the dinner table obsessively wiping our mouths. And though he never dug deep into my past, I felt this hint of love in his awkward cling. I appreciated his request to stay there longer, to be his guest, but certainly not his daughter. The slaughter of my hopes, and the audacity of a man who said hello and goodbye for the first and last time with the very same breath, like never mind my wishes on a star.
Shelley Conley, Milwaukee Poet Laureate, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your work. What a privilege.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jean, for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Jean Creighton is the director of UWM's Manfred Olson Planetarium and our regular astronomy contributor. Shelley Conley is the Poet Laureate of Milwaukee. They'll be presenting Stars, Stories, and Rhythms of Africa at the planetarium tomorrow night at 7. It's a free show, and you can find more information at wuwm.com. We'll take one more break, and then we'll learn about the Wisconsin origin story of the popular role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. Roll for initiative to keep listening to Lake Effect on WUWM. This is Lake Effect on WUWM. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Since it was first created in the 1970s, Dungeons & Dragons has become an international phenomenon. It was the first role-playing game with major commercial success. But few know it all began right here in Wisconsin. Writer T. Krulos uncovers this history in a conversation with Lake Effect's Joy Powers.
People are actually often surprised to learn that D&D is from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Even folks who are from here. And I think part of that is that the history hasn't necessarily been celebrated locally. But let's dig into it. How did Dungeons and Dragons first come to be?
Yes. Well, it starts with a guy named Gary Gygax and his friend at the time, Dave Arneson. They're both very much into war-playing games and were trying to create their own games, and they kind of put their ideas together and formed this game that really revolutionized the gaming industry called Dungeons & Dragons. And this was the first sort of game where you could interact by sort of becoming one of the characters. You would build your character that was a barbarian or a wizard or some sort of warrior, and then the dungeon master leads your group through this game, and you have to collaborate together to find treasure and fight monsters. And it's a really fun adventure and a way to kind of bond with your fellow game players.
The development of it was interesting. As you say, both Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson were very into war games. I believe that's how they met. Mm-hmm. And Gary, I know, had designed a game called Chainmail.
Right.
This ended up being kind of a game that was really focused on the rules, but as you say, Arneson brought in this idea of kind of character play.
Yeah, Arneson had been working on a game called Blackmore. So, they kind of took some of the best elements of both of those games and created this entirely new thing.
Yeah. Now, as someone who grew up in Lake Geneva, I actually knew Gary Gygax quite well. I also had friends whose parents worked at TSR, which was the company that he made. That has a really complicated history in the city of Lake Geneva. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I mean, one thing that I really love about the story is that Lake Geneva developed this big company. So at one point they employed like about 400 people, which is a pretty good part of the population of Lake Geneva. They kind of took over the town and imported all of these writers and artists and game editors. And it just must have been like such an exciting time. But, there were some Game of Thrones style twists to the company, I would say. First, Gygax and Arneson had a bad falling out, and Arneson had to take legal action so he could get a piece of game royalties. And then Gary went from being very poor to being pretty rich in a short amount of space. And I think that a lot of people don't know how to handle that influx of money. So he didn't spend it very wisely. And eventually his own company ousted him from the company in the mid-'80s. The new head was a woman named Lorraine Williams, and she ran the company until the late 90s when they were in really bad financial straits, and the company was bought by Wizards of the Coast, which is a company from the Seattle area that created Magic the Gathering. So they bought the company, and they still own it and are producing the game. And it's really kind of amazing. Dungeons & Dragons is still a very popular property, even in this digital age.
It does continue to have a bit of a footprint in Lake Geneva, as you say. A lot of people moved to this small town for this reason. Now, I will say that point in Lake Geneva's history, as somebody who was from there, Lake Geneva also had the Playboy Hotel that was just on the outskirts. Right. So you have the Playboy Hotel, you have TSR, which is right downtown. It's where the Kilwin's ice cream place is now. Mm-hmm. And you, of course, had the lake and all of the tourism that came along with the lake that honestly predates all of this, is really from like the Great Chicago Fire when tourism starts in Lake Geneva. Right. But with all of that in mind, it still seems like the city hasn't really latched onto this history in quite the way you might expect for such a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, it's only been in very recent years that this history is sort of acknowledged and celebrated in any way. But yeah, a long period of time went by, but now there is a group called the Gygax Memorial Fund, and they've slowly been getting some recognition in the city. So, for example, there's some memorial markers by like Horticultural Hall, which is where the first Gen Con took place.
Gen Con named for
Geneva Convention. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, especially because it's not in Wisconsin anymore, unfortunately. But that's where it started, and it was a very small, humble event, and now it's the largest gaming convention in North America. So 70,000 plus people go to Gen Con nowadays, and it started with less than 100 people. So the Gygax Memorial Fund has also set up a reading alcove in the Lake Geneva Library, which is a beautiful library, by the way. And this alcove includes books that were influential on Gary Gygax. So there's a lot of works by J.R.R. Tolkien and H.P. Lovecraft and stuff like that. And probably the biggest thing that they've been working on, and they've just gotten Lake Geneva to approve this, is they're building a memorial statue of Gary Gygax in the park near the library. And it's going to feature him sitting at a table. And I love this detail. His hand is outstretched, and it's what's called a dice tower. So you drop dice, and it'll come shooting out of his hand onto the table. And people can sit there with him at this table and play Dungeons and Dragons or read a book or do whatever they want. So that's a project that they're currently working on.
Yeah. I was chatting with Gary's widow, Gail Gygax, and I believe they're even going to print some of his original games on the table itself.
Right, yes, ones that he designed, yeah.
Yeah.
They're also having a Dragon Days celebration, and it's kind of a fun small-town fair meets Ren Fair, sort of a mashup. There's like they're setting up some hay bales, so there's a maze that kids can go through, and there's vendors and special readings and screenings of the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which was a brief thing in the 80s. So it's just kind of a fun weekend where the local businesses are celebrating this history.
Very nice. Well, T, thank you as always for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Thanks for having me.
T. Krulos is a writer and author. He wrote about the history of Dungeons & Dragons for Milwaukee Magazine in 2024. That's when he spoke with Lake Effect's Joy Powers. The next Dragon Days Festival is later this year in October. And that wraps up today's Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. If you've missed any of the show this week, you can find all of our conversations at wuwm.com. If you'd like to take Lake Effect on the go, simply download our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll learn about the origins of Black History Month. Plus, as the American Birkebeiner gets underway, we'll meet a former Berkey baby who now participates in the race, not as a bundle to carry across the finish line, but on his own skis. That's on tomorrow's Lake Effect, but for today, thank you so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.